The New York Times was just caught rigging its bestsellers list to keep Republican Elise Stefanik from the #1 spot. Unfortunately, this appears to be a coordinated effort by the mainstream media. Just take a look at this moment when Elise Stefanik appeared on CNN to promote her new book, yet Jake Tapper was somehow able to make this entire segment about bashing President Trump.
For genocide,
your entire civilization
it was targeted
will die.
towards the Iranian terrorist
Okay.
regime.
All right.
It was targeted
Agree
towards
to
the Iranian
disagree.
terrorist regime.
Agree to
This is
disagree. The
typical
book is-
CNN. This is typical CNN.
Okay.
If you want to compare the President of the United States to the university presidents who failed to call for the condemnation of calling for the genocide of Jews, that's on you, Jake. The world saw
It's not
how
what I
morally
said.
equivocating those university presidents were. Yes, you're the one that is it's not a comparison. So if you
I'm
want to
just
make that
asking you
comparison,
if you have the
that's
same
on
standard
CNN.
for
That
somebody.
is not the comparison. Of course, genocide is bad across the board, Jake. President Trump effectively brought the Iranians to the table. He effectively delivered a ceasefire, and he is going to effectively deliver peace to the Middle East to stop, frankly, the killing of the Iranian terrorist regime, which kills their own people and has created havoc across the Middle East.
I mean, come on. We've all seen authors go on these talk shows to promote their new books. We know what it's supposed to look like, right? Usually it's a cordial conversation. They're asked questions about, hey, where did you get the idea? How were you inspired to write this book? Tell us a little bit about the writing process. What's a key takeaway that you hope readers take when they pick up your book? And last but not least, why should our audience members purchase a copy of your book? That's usually what we see when they're promoting their books, but here you can see it was a throwaway line by Jake Tapper. He just threw the book up on screen, and the rest of it, he was basically trying to goad her into attacking President Trump. Well, going back to the New York Times bestsellers list, they have Elise Stefanik in third place when she should actually be #1. So in first place, they have Famesick by Lena Dunham, then second place, Strangers by Belle Burden, and Elise Stefanik wrapping up the top 3 with Poisoned Ivies, which of course is a clever reference to how Ivy League institutions have been poisoned, how they're poisoning the minds of innocent students. Now, if you take a closer look at this list, you'll see there's this small icon there. It's a cross made out of 2 swords. This asterisk is really important. We'll get to that later in the video. Unfortunately for the New York Times, however, we know how many books are actually sold thanks to BookScan. So BookScan is the gold standard data service that tracks actual weekly retail sales of trade print books. They also track online sales. It's similar to like how we have Nielsen to track TV ratings. And sure, Nielsen isn't perfect. No tracking service is, but there are gold standards in each industry, and BookScan is the gold standard when it comes to literature. So what does GoldScan say Elise Stefanik's sales are? Well, in her first week of sales, she sold 20,000 books, 20,186, which was enough to put her in 6th place overall and 1st place in the political science category. Now, don't forget, the New York Times had Elise Stefanik in 3rd place behind Lena Dunham and Belle Burden. So what does BookScan say that they sold in that exact same week? Well, according to BookScan, Lena Dunham's memoir, Famesick, only sold 19,270 copies that week, placing her in 7th overall. So she basically sold 2,000 copies fewer than Elise Stefanik, yet the New York Times said she was #1 on their bestsellers list. #2 was Belle Burden, and according to BookScan, again, the gold standard, she only sold 11,802 copies that exact same week, putting her in 20th place overall. Again, the New York Times said she was in 2nd place. So both #1 and #2 sold fewer copies than Elise Stefanik, yet the New York Times promoted them higher. So you're probably wondering, well, how can the New York Times manipulate this? Like, what is their standard here? Well, this can be explained by the asterisk I mentioned earlier. So this dagger symbol was first introduced in 1995, and it denotes that a significant portion of the book's sales came from bulk purchases. So for example, you probably noticed that according to BookScan, Elise Stefanik was in 6th place overall, yet the New York Times actually bumped her up to 3rd place overall. So you're probably wondering, why is the New York Times ranking her higher than she actually was? Well, the New York Times actually excludes a lot of books from their list. The best example of this is the Bible. The Bible has actually been the #1 best-selling book, not just for the last few years, but the last few decades. And the New York Times has excluded it from their list because of these bulk orders. You have a large portion of those sales coming from nonprofit organizations, churches, groups like the Gideons that buy the Bible in bulk so that they can donate it, so that they can give it away for free as part of their mission work. And the New York Times Times, they say, well, because it's not individual sales, it doesn't count. And so that's how the New York Times is actually able to manipulate this list. So you'll see the third bullet point from the bottom, it has an impact on rankings. They flag it. They then use sales data, investigative reporting, and analytics to determine the New York Times bestsellers rankings. But there's just one problem with all of this. As you probably guessed, based on the fact that the New York Times has excluded the Bible from its bestsellers list for decades, the Times has a history of targeting conservative authors and conservative books and excluding it from their lists. Just take a look at it again at the very bottom here. Commonly flagged titles: Triggered by Donald Trump Jr. or A Time for Truth by Ted Cruz. Now look, when it comes to political books, it's not uncommon for political action committees to buy those books in bulk. They'll usually buy them in bulk and give them away to people who donate to the political party or give them away at campaign events. But the reality is, it's not just Republicans who do this. Democrats do this as well. In fact, Gavin Newsom did it recently. He purchased his book in huge numbers, and yet the New York Times still put Gavin Newsom on its bestsellers list. Now look, the fact that Elise Stefanik is a Republican doesn't help her at all, right? It is the coastal elite who manufacture this list. Instead of just using the sales data, they use a combination of sales data and investigative reporting and analytics to curate these lists by hand. But what really hurt Elise Stefanik here is the fact that her book, Poisoned Ivies, is actually exposing how these Ivy League institutions are pipelines for liberal and Democrat activists. She's exposing this, and she is a trusted voice. She is a woman, and Democrats, they claim to have a stranglehold on women and minorities. So the fact that a strong Republican woman wrote this book is really making the Democrat Party panic right now. This is a really interesting look into some of what Elise Stefanik wrote about in her book.
People are voting with their feet and their wallets, both from the student perspective and the parent's perspective. So look at Vanderbilt, for example, which is highlighted in this book as an institution that is leading, that is focused on academic excellence and not political indoctrination. The percentage of acceptance for Vanderbilt was more competitive than some of the Ivy League schools this past year. That had not been the case beforehand. So you do see a shift in terms of where people are looking to attend universities. At the same time, and I talk about this in the book, these institutions are part of the American experiment. Many of them predated our nation's founding over 250 years ago. The fervor which led to the Revolutionary War, oftentimes American values were at these universities, and they've just shifted so far away from their founding mission. So I go into the founding principles of places like Penn, of Columbia, of Harvard, and how far away they have shifted. I think we need to continue to shine a bright spotlight, deliver transparency, and highlight when they make the correct decision, which is oftentimes in opposition to their radical faculty, that they're praised. That's why I think the City Journal's rating system is very important. And it shows that a congressional hearing can have an earthquake impact on the direction of higher education.
Yeah, so it's no wonder why the New York Times put Elise Stefanik below Lena Dunham and Belle Burden, even though her sales are actually higher than both of them. I mean, just think about the target audience, the target demographic for the New York Times. It's probably people who went to these Ivy Leagues, the coastal elites, and heck, who works at the New York Times? It's also probably people who got their degrees from these Ivy League, from these elitist constitutions. So it makes sense why they would tamper with the sales numbers and actually push her lower on the list than she deserved. Now, to explore just how bad these Ivy League institutions have fallen, just take a look at how Yale students welcomed Hassan Piker to their campus. In case you're not familiar, Hassan Piker is the nephew of Cenk Uygur, and he just recently said that America deserved 9/11. It's just crazy to me that someone can say America deserves September 11 and get that sort of reception on Yale's campus, or any campus for that matter. Just imagine if a conservative activist went to Yale's campus. I mean, we've seen this time and time again. When Charlie Kirk was alive, we saw protesters coming up. We saw when Riley Gaines went on tour, she had to shelter in place. She had to lock herself in a room when campus security did nothing and people were just storming the campus, causing mayhem. I mean, we've seen time and time again conservative conservative activists threatened, targeted, just hit with violence. It's absolutely crazy. And yet on Yale's campus, this guy promoting 9/11 can get that sort of reception. In fact, that's not even the worst of it. He just recently said that Republican representatives, senators, should be killed. He was advocating for this on his own podcast.
If you cared about Medicare fraud or Medicaid fraud, you would kill Rick Scott, okay? You wouldn't make Rick Scott, former governor of Florida, Rick Scott, you wouldn't make him the current, what is his current office? What is he?
I mean, just absolutely vile stuff to actually be promoting violence on his platform. Well, we're speaking about the New York Times, and coincidentally, Hassan Piker recently appeared on a New York Times video podcast, and he basically encouraged viewers to steal. He said, theft is okay, especially when you do it against major corporations.
Would you steal from Whole Foods?
You want to go first? Well,
right, guys?
I'm pro stealing from big corporations because, you know, they steal quite a bit more from their own workers. However, one thing that might even help your ethical dilemma is the fact that the automated process that they design, these companies know will increase shrink, right? So it's actually factored in. The lemons that you stole are factored into the bottom line of these.
It's just ridiculous. They will come up with excuses for everything. They will try to justify everything, and they're on the wrong side of these issues morally, yet they claim that they're on the moral high horse. It really is disgusting. Everything is upside down. Right is wrong. Wrong is right. Hassan Piker is one of the leading voices, one of the rising voices on the left right now. I guarantee if he wrote a book and the Democrat Party or some political action committee purchased his books in bulk, the New York Times would still place him high up on their bestsellers list. So it's just an absolute joke. Well, as I referenced earlier in the video, and I have covered this actually in a previous video, Gavin Newsom was caught attempting to rig the bestsellers list. But before we get into that, I would like to acknowledge the members of today's Governor's Club. They are My Milk Crown, RFT 0920, Paige O'Byrne, Anthony Loki, Super Romer, and Jeremy 2001 Happy. These are people who give tips and super thanks to the channel. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you enjoy. Well, according to the Washington Free Beacon, the New York Times puts Gavin Newsom on bestsellers list despite bulk sales it has used to disqualify conservatives. In fact, the New York Times called Gavin Newsom out on this. They exposed that he used $1.5 million from his own super PAC to purchase 67,000 copies of the book. The 67,000 copies that Gavin Newsom's PAC purchased accounted for 2/3 of his total sales. Yet when we take a look at the New York Times bestsellers list, let's take a look here. Gavin Newsom, a young man in a hurry, in 4th place, and you will notice there is no asterisk there. Again, Elise Stefanik had an asterisk, and he didn't, at least not on the front page. It's not until you actually click on the title itself that that asterisk, tiny, 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 appears there, denoting that, yes, bulk orders accounted for a large portion of his sales. As always, though, all of this is just my analysis and commentary. That's what's happening in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. So what do you think? Do you think bestsellers list, and I'm not just talking about the New York Times, but I'm talking about in general, do you think they should be based on BookScan data, or in other words, the actual volume of books sold, or do you understand the need to have humans curate this list and maybe account for those bulk orders? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, look, I understand why some people may say, hey, we need to have human reviewers and we'll account for those bulk orders, but I don't think the way the New York Times is doing this is right. I think that if you're going to have a standard, you need to apply it equally on both sides, and it's very clear that the New York Times appears to favor Democrat authors and left-leaning liberal authors far better, treat them way better than they treat conservative authors. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on how those lists should be handled. How would you handle it if you had your own bestsellers list? If you haven't already, please be sure to leave me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask for, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.